Grandma's stories are so boring. I heard it with my own ears. A whisper sharp and clear as a sliver of glass, cutting through the warm, thick air of my son's house. The air was heavy with the smell of a roasting turkey I hadn't cooked and the sound of a football game I wasn't watching. It was Thanksgiving. A day for gratitude. My grandson Leo said it. He said it to his mother, my daughter-in-law, Susan. They were standing by the kitchen island, a vast continent of polished granite that always felt cold to the touch. He had a plate in his hand, piled high with food I didn't recognize. Little green beans, skinny and slick with some kind of oil, not the slow-simmered, bacon fat-infused ones I'd been making for 50 years. A swirl of mashed potatoes that came from a box. I knew it did. I was sitting in the living room, in a deep leather armchair that swallowed me whole. It smelled of my son Robert's cologne and something vaguely chemical. I had been asked to sit, to rest. "Don't you worry about a thing, Mom," Robert had said, patting my shoulder. The pat was too quick, too light. A gesture of dismissal, not affection. I had brought a sweet potato pie. My own mother's recipe. The crust made with lard, flaky and tender. The filling rich with cinnamon and nutmeg. The sweet potatoes mashed by my own hand, not poured from a can. It sat on the counter untouched, next to a store-bought pumpkin pie in an aluminum tin. Susan had thanked me for it with a tight, bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How thoughtful, Hattie," she'd said. "But you know the kids. They're so picky." Leo was 12, an age where opinions form like crystals, hard and sharp. He had just asked me what Thanksgiving was like when I was a little girl. I had started to tell him. I told him about my father, how he would get the turkey from a farmer down the road, a real live gobbling bird just days before. I told him about the wood-burning stove in our kitchen, how my mother's face would be flushed with heat and effort all day, and how the whole house smelled of baking bread and roasting fowl, a smell so deep and good it settled right into the floorboards. I was just getting to the part about my grandfather, how he'd lost 2 fingers on his right hand in a mill accident but could still peel a potato thinner and faster than anyone I'd ever seen. That's when Leo had gotten up. He'd muttered something about getting more food and walked away. And I saw him, through the wide opening between the living room and the kitchen. I saw him lean into his mother. Grandma's stories are so boring the world didn't stop. The football players on the television kept running. The men's laughter from the den continued to boom. The ticking of the ornate clock on the mantelpiece didn't miss a beat. But something inside of me went still. A deep cold stillness like a pond icing over in the first hard freeze of winter. I watched Susan. I watched her face. A mother has a choice in that moment. She can defend. She can correct. She can say, "No, honey, that's our history. That's your grandmother's life." You listen. Susan did none of those things. She smoothed Leo's hair, her hand lingering on his head in a gesture of soft agreement. She glanced over at me, a quick, furtive look. And then she gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. She nodded, as if to say, "I know. You're right. But we must be patient with the old." That was it. That was the moment. It wasn't the careless cruelty of a 12-year-old boy. It was the quiet, considered confirmation of a 45-year-old woman. It was the nod. The nod that said my life, the stories that held it, the history that filled it was a burden. An obligation. A tiresome, boring ritual to be endured before the real festivities could begin. My hands were resting in my lap, on the worn fabric of my good wool coat. They didn't tremble. Not yet. I looked down at them, at the network of veins and wrinkles that mapped out my 78 years. These hands had held my husband's hand as he passed from this world to the next. They had rocked my son, Robert, to sleep when he was a baby, feverish and crying. They had kneaded dough and planted gardens and folded laundry and written checks and held countless books. They had lived a life that was now apparently boring. I sat there for another hour. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I answered questions about my health in the vague, pleasant way they expected. "Oh, I'm getting by. Can't complain." I watched them cut the store-bought pie. I watched my sweet potato pie sit on the counter. A lonely, lovely thing in its simple glass dish. A relic. An artifact from a forgotten time. When it was time to go, Robert helped me with my coat. "Did you have a good time, Mom?" he asked, his mind already on the football game's final score. "It was very illuminating," I said. He didn't catch the tone. He just heard the words. "Good, good. We'll see you at Christmas." Then they packed up a slice of my pie for me, a gesture of charity I did not want. It sat in a plastic container on the seat beside me during the drive home. Robert drove, one hand on the wheel, the other holding his phone, scrolling. He talked about his work, a promotion he was hoping for, a problem with a colleague. I made the right sounds, the little murmurs of encouragement a mother is supposed to make. But I was miles away. I was back in that kitchen with my mother, the air warm and sweet. I was holding my father's hand, tracing the calluses on his palm. I was living inside the stories they thought were so boring. When we got to my small brick house, the house my husband, James, and I had bought 50 years ago, Robert walked me to the door. He didn't come in. He never came in anymore. "You get some rest, Mom," he said, giving my shoulder another one of those quick, dismissive pats. "And don't worry about Christmas dinner. Susan's got it all handled. We're doing something modern this year." Italian. I just nodded. There were no words left. Inside, the silence of my home wrapped around me like a familiar quilt. The first thing I did was take the plastic container with the slice of my own pie and drop it into the kitchen trash can. It made a dull thud. I did not want to eat their pity. The house was cold. I turned up the thermostat and went into the living room. The grandfather clock that had been my own grandmother's ticked steadily in the corner. Tick, tock, measuring out the seconds of my life. I ran my hand over the worn velvet of my favorite armchair, the one James had always sat in. It was where I did my thinking. I didn't turn on the television. I didn't put on music. I just sat. The stillness that had begun in my son's living room spread through my whole body. It wasn't a sad stillness. It wasn't angry. It was something else. It was clarity. A single perfect cold point of clarity. My life was a collection of stories. That's all any life is in the end. The story of a girl born in rural Alabama, the daughter of a sharecropper. The story of a young woman who moved north during the Great Migration, seeking a life her parents could only dream of. The story of meeting a good, kind man named James at a church social. The story of raising a son, of working for 30 years as a hospital clerk, of saving and sacrificing. The story of grandchildren, of widowhood, of growing old. These were not small stories. They were woven into the larger story of our people, of this country. They held struggle and joy, disappointment and triumph. They were the threads that connected me to my ancestors and, I had thought, to my descendants. But I was wrong. The thread had been cut. Not by me. By them. By their impatience, their modernity, their casual disdain. They didn't want my stories. They wanted my presence, a quiet, smiling, agreeable prop at their holiday table. They wanted my name on a card, my signature on a check. They wanted a grandmother, but they did not want the woman who occupied that role. Grandma's stories are so boring. The words echoed in the quiet room. Boring. Uninteresting. Tedious. My history. My parents' struggle. My husband's love. My survival. All of it. A collection of tiresome anecdotes to be tolerated from an old woman in a chair. I got up and went to the kitchen. I didn't make my usual cup of chamomile tea. I opened the canister of chicory coffee, the kind my father used to drink, dark and bitter. I brewed a single strong cup. The smell filled the small kitchen, a scent of earth and smoke and memory. It was not a comforting smell. It was a bracing one. I sat at my small kitchen table, the one that had been here since we moved in. I sipped the hot black coffee. I looked at the photograph on the wall, a faded black and white picture of James and me on our wedding day. We were so young, full of hope, full of stories yet to be written. What would James have said? He was a quiet man, but he had a spine of steel. He did not suffer fools, and he did not tolerate disrespect. Not toward himself and certainly not toward me. I could almost hear his voice, a low rumble in my memory. Hattie, you are the keeper of the flame. The flame was sputtering. It was in danger of being extinguished by a gust of indifference. I finished my coffee and rinsed the cup in the sink. I walked to the small secretary desk in the corner of the living room. I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper, the good linen kind I saved for important letters. I took out my fountain pen, the one James had given me on our 25th anniversary. The ink was dark blue. The nib scratched slightly against the paper. I wrote 2 words at the top of the page. My history. Underneath, I began to make a list. It was not a list of grievances. It was not an emotional outpouring. It was a plan. A series of steps. Cold, clear, and methodical. The first thing I wrote was, call Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins was my lawyer. Or rather, his son was. The original Mr. Collins, who had helped us draw up our first wills, was long gone. His son David had taken over the practice. A quiet, respectful man who always called me Ms. Walker. The next morning I woke before the sun. I did not lie in bed and think. I got up, wrapped my hair, washed my face, and got dressed. I put on a simple navy blue dress, my good pearls, and the wool coat. Dignity is a form of armor. At 9 o'clock precisely, I picked up the telephone. Its weight felt solid and real in my hand. I dialed the number for the law office from memory. Collins and Son, good morning. A cheerful voice answered. This is Hattie Walker. I'd like to make an appointment with Mr. David Collins. As soon as possible. There was a brief pause. Of course, Ms. Walker. He has an opening this afternoon at 2. Would that work for you? That would be perfect, I said. After I hung up, I moved on to the next item on my list. The bank. My bank was only a few blocks away. I decided to walk. The November air was crisp and clean. Felt good to be moving, to be taking action. Each step on the pavement felt firm, decisive. The bank was a modern building of glass and steel. Inside, the air was sterile and quiet. I went to the desk of the branch manager, a woman named Ms. Albright. I had met her once before, when I had to sort out some paperwork after James died. She remembered me. Ms. Walker, how can I help you today? I sat down in the chair opposite her desk. I opened my purse and took out my bank book and my identification. I need to make some changes to my accounts, I said. My voice was steady. It did not waver. Certainly, she smiled, ready to assist. I have a checking and a savings account here. My son Robert Walker is listed as a joint owner. I want his name removed. Effective immediately. Ms. Albright's professional smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. She recovered quickly. Of course. We can certainly do that. Will Robert be coming in to sign the paperwork? No, I said. He will not. I understand that since he is a joint owner, I can remove him without his consent. Is that correct? I had looked this up the night before. I had done my research. Yes, that's correct, she said, her tone now carefully neutral. She began typing on her computer. I just need to prepare the documents. It will only take a moment. As I waited, I looked around the bank lobby. It was clean, efficient, and personal. A place of transactions. That's what this was. A transaction. I was reclaiming what was mine. My money, earned over a lifetime of work and careful saving. It was not a family slush fund. It was not Robert's inheritance in waiting. It was mine. I signed the papers where she indicated. My signature was firm. Hattie Mae Walker. I watched as she typed on her keyboard, and I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that Robert's access was gone. Is there anything else? Ms. Albright asked. Yes, I said. The power of attorney. My son holds it. I want it revoked. This gave her pause. Ms. Walker, for that, you will need to speak with your lawyer. We can only act on a legal directive. I have an appointment this afternoon, I said. I just wanted to inform you of my intention, she nodded slowly. I understand. I left the bank feeling lighter than I had in years. The air outside seemed brighter. I had taken the first real step. I had drawn a line in the sand. The office of Collins and Son was in an old brick building downtown. The scent of old paper and floor wax greeted me as I entered. It smelled of permanence, of things written down and made official. Mr. Collins was a man in his 50s, with kind eyes and a respectful manner. He shook my hand and led me into his office, which was lined with books from floor to ceiling. "Ms. Walker," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "It's good to see you, though I'm sorry it's been so long. How have you been?" "I am well, thank you, David," I said, using his first name to establish a different kind of footing. This was not a social call. "I need to make some significant changes to my legal arrangements." He folded his hands on his desk. "I'm here to listen," and so I told him. I did not tell him about Thanksgiving. I did not tell him about Leo's whisper or Susan's nod. I did not speak of my hurt. I spoke of my intentions. First, I want to revoke the existing power of attorney assigned to my son, Robert Walker. I want to draw up a new one assigning you my legal counsel as my agent should I become incapacitated. Your duties will be strictly limited to executing my written directives." He listened, his expression unreadable. He made a note on a legal pad. "Understood. And second, I want to rewrite my will. Completely." He looked up from his notes, his gaze direct. "All right. How would you like it to read? My current will leaves everything to my son. If he predeceases me, it goes to my grandchildren Leo and Maya Walker in equal shares. I want to change that." I took a deep breath. This was the heart of it. "I want to leave a specific bequest of $50,000 to my granddaughter Maya Walker. She is a good girl. And the remainder of the estate?" he asked gently. "Your house, your savings, your investments?" Here it was. The culmination of my cold, clear moment of clarity. "The entire remainder of my estate," I said, my voice as steady as the ticking of my grandmother's clock, "is to be left to the Montgomery County Historical Society." Mr. Collins put his pen down. He looked at me for a long moment. He was a good lawyer. He had to be sure. "Ms. Walker, Hattie, this is a very substantial change. It effectively disinherits your son and your grandson. May I ask why?" "You may," I said. "And I will tell you. My son and his family have made it clear that they have no interest in my history, in my stories, in the life that I have lived. They find it boring." I said the word without emotion, a simple statement of fact. "So I have decided to leave my legacy to an institution that values history, an institution that preserves stories, so they are not forgotten. It seems to me the most logical thing in the world." He picked up his pen again. He did not argue. He did not question my soundness of mind. He simply nodded. "Very well. I will draft the new power of attorney, and the new will according to your instructions. I'll have them ready for you to review and sign by the end of the week." When I left his office, the sun was beginning to set. The sky was streaked with orange and purple. I felt clean, as if a lifetime of dust and obligation had been washed away. I had taken my history, my boring life, and I had placed it in safekeeping. The first call came 2 days later. It was Robert. I let the answering machine take it. "Hey, Mom. Just calling to see how you're doing. Listen, I was looking at my account online, and it seems like there's some kind of glitch. My access to your checking account isn't showing up. Can you give the bank a call and sort it out? Talk to you later." I stood by the machine, listening to his voice, so full of casual assumption. When the message ended, a small red light blinked, a silent plea for attention. I reached out and pressed the delete button. The light went out. The silence in the house was profound. The next day, a text from Susan appeared on the simple flip phone I kept for emergencies. "Hattie, Robert says there's a problem at the bank. Are you okay?" I looked at the words on the tiny screen. I did not reply. I deleted the message. Then came the voicemails. Robert's voice tighter now. "Mom, I called the bank. They said you removed me from the account. What is going on? Is this some kind of mistake? Call me delete." Susan's voice, syrupy with concern. "Hattie, we're getting worried. You're not answering your phone. Please just let us know you're all right. Leo is asking about you." The mention of Leo sent a cold ripple through me. I almost laughed. Leo, who found my life a bore, was now a tool of manipulation. "He is asking about you." I did not believe it for a second. Delete. During this time I began a new routine. In the mornings I worked in my small garden, tending to the late-blooming roses and the hardy gardenias. I tidied my house. I went through closets and drawers, sorting a lifetime of accumulations. I found a box of Robert's old school reports, his Little League trophies. I packed them neatly into a larger box. I found photo albums, filled with pictures of birthday parties and family vacations. I closed them and stacked them on the dining room table. I was not destroying my past. I was curating it. I was deciding what was essential. I took down the framed school pictures of Leo from the mantelpiece. They were bright, professional photos of a smiling, handsome boy. I looked at his face, searching for something I recognized. But he was a stranger to me, really. A boy who existed in another world. A world where everything was fast and new. And the past was a boring story. I wrapped each photo in tissue paper and laid it gently in the box with his father's trophies. I left up the photos of James. I left up the one of my parents, stern and proud in front of their first small house. I left up a picture of my granddaughter, Maya. The calls became more frequent, more demanding. Mom, this is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. Whatever we did, I'm sorry. Now pick up the phone, whatever we did. He didn't even know. He hadn't noticed a thing. The apology was a blank check. An attempt to solve a problem without understanding its nature. Delete. Hattie, this is Susan. I don't know what's gotten into you, but you are upsetting the whole family. You are being incredibly selfish. After all we do for you, all we do for you. The words hung in the air after the machine clicked off. What did they do? They invited me to holidays where my contributions were ignored. They managed my money without my input. They made decisions about my life assuming I was incapable. They treated me not as a person but as a project. A responsibility. Delete. One afternoon, about a week after my visit to the lawyer, my doorbell rang. A sharp, insistent peal. I looked through the peephole. It was Maya, my granddaughter. She was a college student, 20 years old, with a thoughtful face and my husband's kind eyes. She was holding a small paper bag. I hesitated. I had not spoken to anyone in my family for a week. But Maya was different. I opened the door. Grandma, she said, her voice soft. Can I come in? I stood back and let her pass. She walked into my living room and stopped looking around. Her eyes were sharp. She noticed the empty spaces on the mantelpiece. Dad's losing his mind, she said, turning to face me. He and Mom are saying all sorts of things. That you're sick, that you're not thinking clearly, that someone is taking advantage of you. I just looked at her, waiting. Are you okay? She asked. It was a genuine question. The first one I had heard in a very long time. I am perfectly fine, baby, I said. Would you like some tea? We sat at my kitchen table. I brewed a pot of my good orange pekoe tea. Maya had brought me a croissant from a bakery she liked. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Grandma, she finally said. What's going on? I decided to tell her a piece of the truth. Not the whole story of the will, not yet. But the heart of it. At Thanksgiving, I started. I was telling a story. About my grandfather, Maya nodded. I remember. About his hand, she had been listening. The realization was a small warm thing in my chest. Your brother told your mother my stories were boring. And your mother agreed with him. Maya's face fell. She looked down at her hands wrapped around her teacup. She didn't deny it. She didn't make excuses. I heard them, she said quietly. I was in the hall. I'm sorry, Grandma. I should have said something. There was nothing for you to say, I told her. This isn't about you. It's about me. I have spent my whole life being a good mother, a good grandmother. I have tried to pass down our family's history, the things we came from, the struggles. And I have realized they are not interested. Dad's just busy, she offered weakly. He doesn't mean it. Oh, he means it, I said, my voice gentle but firm. He doesn't mean to be cruel, but he means to be dismissive. Because my world, my history is not as important as his world. It's old. It's slow. It's boring. Maya was quiet. She knew I was right. She had seen it her whole life. The way her father would interrupt me. The way her mother would steer conversations away from the past. So I am making some changes, I concluded. I am taking back control of my own life. Of my own story. She looked up at me, her eyes clear. What do you need? She asked. Not what can I do to fix this with my parents. Not are you sure you know what you're doing? Just what do you need? I need you to trust me, I said. And I need you to keep living your own beautiful life. Go to your classes. Study hard. Be happy. Don't get caught in the middle of this. She reached across the table and put her hand on mine. Her skin was warm. I trust you, Grandma. Always when she left, I felt a sense of peace. I was not entirely alone. There was one person who saw me. One person who was still willing to listen to my stories. The following week, I signed the new will and the power of attorney at Mr. Collins's office. The papers felt heavy in my hands, a weight of finality. I was now legally and financially separate from my son. I was my own woman entirely. The next step was the house. It was too big for me. It was filled with memories of a family that no longer existed in the way I had once imagined. It was an asset, a large piece of my estate that needed to be managed. I called a real estate agent, a sensible woman from my church. I told her I wanted to sell. Quietly. No sign in the yard. Things moved quickly after that. The agent found a buyer within a month, a young family just starting out. I accepted their offer. I had 60 days to move. I began to pack. This was the hardest part. Sifting through 50 years of a life. Every object held a story. The chipped ceramic mug James drank his coffee from every morning. The handmade quilt my mother had given us as a wedding present. Its colors faded. Its stitches still strong. Robert's tiny bronzed baby shoes. I packed the quilt and the mug in a box marked keep. I packed the baby shoes in the box for Robert, along with his trophies and school photos. I was not erasing him. I was just putting him in his proper place. A part of my history, not the entirety of my future. I found a small bright apartment in a senior living community on the other side of town. It had a balcony where I could put my gardenias. It was clean and new and held no ghosts. The phone calls from Robert and Susan had stopped. They had been replaced by a stony silence. I imagined they were conferring, planning their next move. I knew it would not be a conversation. It would be a confrontation. It came on a Saturday afternoon, 3 weeks before I was due to move. I was labeling boxes when I heard a key in my front door. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had forgotten they still had a key. The door opened and they stood there, Robert and Susan, their faces grim. They looked like a delegation. They stepped inside, their eyes taking in the stacks of boxes, the bare spaces on the walls. What is this? Robert demanded. His voice was loud in the quiet house. What are you doing? I am packing, I said calmly. I did not raise my voice. I stayed where I was by the dining room table, a roll of packing tape in my hand. I've sold the house. You what? Susan gasped. Without telling us? Hattie, you can't do that. This is my house, Susan, I said. I can do whatever I wish with it. We are your family. Robert's face was turning red. You're supposed to talk to us before you make decisions like this. We have a right to know. There it was. The entitlement. The assumption that my life was a matter for their committee to approve. I set the tape dispenser down on the table with a quiet click. I folded my hands in front of me. A right to know, I repeated softly. That's interesting. Tell me, Robert, what right did I have to be treated with respect in your home? What right did I have to not be dismissed and ignored? What right did I have to expect my own son to teach his children that my life has value? He was taken aback. What are you talking about? Thanksgiving. You're doing all this because of Thanksgiving? Because of something a 12-year-old said. No, I said, my voice still quiet, still measured. I am not doing this because of what Leo said. I am doing this because of what you have done. For years. You have not listened. You have not seen me. You have treated me like a piece of furniture, something to be dusted off for holidays and then forgotten. Thanksgiving was not the cause. It was simply the moment of clarity. "This is insane," Susan muttered, shaking her head. "She's not well. Robert, she needs help." I turned my gaze to her. "I have never been more well in my life, Susan. I am finally seeing things as they are, not as I wish them to be. I heard what Leo said. And I saw you. I saw you nod." Her face paled. She opened her mouth to deny it, but no words came out. She had been seen. The small secret betrayal was now out in the open. "This isn't about a story, Mom," Robert tried, his voice softer now, wheedling. "This is about your money, isn't it? Someone's gotten to you. That lawyer." "No one has gotten to me," I said. "My money is my own. My decisions are my own. And my story is my own. And I have decided who is worthy of hearing it." I walked to the front door and opened it wide. The cool afternoon air rushed in. "I would like you to leave my house now," I said. It was not a request. Robert stared at me, his mouth agape. He saw something in my face he had never seen before. Not anger. Not hurt. Just finality. A closed door. They left. They didn't say another word. As their car pulled away from the curb, I closed my door and I locked it. Then I went to the phone and called a locksmith. The move was exhausting but liberating. Maya came to help me. She didn't ask questions. She just packed and labeled and carried boxes. She helped me set up my new small apartment. We hung the picture of her great-grandparents. We put the quilt on my new bed. We arranged my books on the shelves. "It's nice here, Grandma," she said, looking out from the balcony. "You can see the whole city." "It's a new view," I said. And it was. I settled into a new life. A quiet life. I joined a book club at the community center. I started volunteering twice a week at the Montgomery County Historical Society. The first time I walked in there, I felt a sense of coming home. It was a quiet place, filled with the artifacts of other people's lives. A dusty wedding dress from 1920. A collection of letters from a soldier in World War II. A display of farming tools from the turn of the century. Each object held a story. Each story was treated with care, with reverence. They asked me to help with the oral history project. I sat with a kind young woman with a tape recorder, and I told her my stories. I told her about my father's hands, and my mother's kitchen, and the journey north. I told her about James and the life we built. I told her everything. And she listened. She leaned forward. She asked questions. She found it interesting. My stories were not boring. They just needed the right audience. I lived like this for 2 years. In peace. In dignity. Maya visited me every Sunday. We would have tea and I would tell her a story about her grandfather or about when I was a girl. She would tell me about her classes, about a boy she liked, about her dreams for the future. We were building a new bridge between the past and the future. I did not hear from Robert or Susan. I received a Christmas card the first year, with a generic printed message. I did not reply. The second year there was nothing. I had been successfully excised from their life. The boring old woman was no longer a problem to be managed. Then one day a letter arrived. A thick, cream-colored envelope. The handwriting on the front was Robert's. I held it for a long time before opening it. I made myself a cup of tea and sat on my balcony, among my gardenias. It was a long letter. 5 pages. He wrote about his confusion, his anger. And then, slowly, haltingly, he wrote about his regret. "Maya talks about you all the time," he wrote. "She tells me the stories you tell her. Stories about Grandpa James, stories I'd forgotten. Stories I never even knew. I took you for granted, Mom. I thought you would always be there, a fixed point in my life. I never stopped to think about what that life contained. I was busy. I was distracted. I was a fool." He wrote that Susan had admitted to the nod. They had fought about it. He wrote that Leo, now a teenager, had expressed remorse. He had been a child trying to be cool and detached. "I am sorry," he wrote at the end. "I am sorry for not listening. I am sorry for not valuing your life. My life. Our history. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I am finally listening." I read the letter twice. The words were there. The apology I had never thought I would receive. I folded the letter and put it on the small table beside my chair. I did not cry. I did not feel a rush of forgiveness. I felt a quiet acknowledgement. A fact had been stated. A debt had been paid. I looked out at the city. The sun was setting, just as it had the day I left Mr. Collins's office. I did not pick up the phone. I did not write a reply. The will remained as it was. My legacy, my history was safe. It would be preserved and honored by people who understood its worth. My granddaughter, my Maya, had her own legacy, a foundation for her future. The relationship with my son, that was a different kind of story. It had been broken. Perhaps it could be mended. Perhaps a new story could be written. But it would be on different terms. It would be a story written on my time. I had spent 78 years accommodating the needs and comforts of others. I had made myself small to make them feel big. I had silenced my own stories so they could tell theirs. No more. My name is Hattie Mae Walker. My life has not been boring. It has been long, and it has been hard, and it has been beautiful. And I am the one who gets to write the ending. The story is mine.